Good morning, students. Welcome to the last session of the lesson Federalism, Class 10, Political Science. In the first two parts, we dealt with the meaning of federalism, features, types of federalism, the characteristics of Indian federalism, and federalism practiced in India. In this session, we would be dealing with decentralization in India. Now, before we go into the details of decentralization, let's first understand the very meaning of the word decentralization. Decentralization means that when power is taken away from the central and state governments and given to the local government. Now, why do you think a decentralization is required into this country? Of course, because of vastness, because of internally diverse nature of the country, and due to the need for power sharing. We have noted previously that federal governments have two or more tiers of government. We have also discussed the different two tiers of government in our country. But a country like India cannot be run only through these two tiers, that is the central government and the state government. States in India are very large, and some of the states are so large and are as large as independent countries of Europe. Many of these states are internally very diverse. There is thus a need for power sharing within these states. Federal power sharing in India needs another tier of government below that of the state government, and here comes the third tier of the government. This is the rationale for decentralization of power. This resulted finally into a third tier of government called as local government or the panchayat. Now, the very basic idea behind decentralization is that there are large number of problems and issues which are best settled at local government. So the government at the center cannot solve these problems. People staying into those areas have better knowledge of problems in their localities. They also have better ideas on where to spend money and how to manage things more efficiently. Besides, at the local level, it is possible for the people to directly participate in decision making. This helps to inculcate a habit of democratic participation. Local government is the best way to realize one important principle of democracy, and that is local self-government. The need for decentralization was recognized in our constitution. Since then, there have been several attempts to decentralize power to the level of village and towns. Panchayats in villages and municipalities in urban areas were set up in all states, but these were directly under the control of the state government. Election to these local governments were not held regularly. Local governments did not have any power or resources of their own. Thus, there was decentralization, but in the real terms, in effective terms, there was a very little decentralization. Therefore, a major step towards decentralization was taken in 1992. The constitution was amended to make the third tier of democracy more powerful and effective. Now it is constitutionally mandatory to hold elections, regular elections to these local government bodies. Seats are reserved in the elected bodies and the executive head of these institutions for the scheduled caste and the scheduled tribes and other backward classes. At least 1/3 of positions are reserved for women. An independent institution called the State Election Commission has been created in each state to conduct panchayat and municipal elections. The state governments are required to share some powers and revenue with the local government bodies. The nature of sharing varies from state to state. Now, the new system which has been adopted is the Panchayati Raj system, which is also called as the local self-government, that is at the rural level. This Panchayati Raj system is a three-tier system. One, at the village level, that is the grassroots level, the very basic level. Here there are Gram Panchayats formed by Gram Sabha, and this is headed by a Sarpanch. The second level is the block level, means at the village level, at the Gram Panchayat level, there can be one or more small village which constitute the Gram Panchayat. In the block level, there are many Gram Panchayats which constitute the block level. Here it is called as the Panchayat Samiti, and these are elected by the Panchayat members. BDO, who is the head from the government side, takes care of the block level. At the district level, where it's a combination or the collection of many blocks which form together the district, here it is called as the Zilla Parishad, formed by elected members and have members of Lok Sabha and MLA of the district. It is headed by the Zilla Chairperson. The local government is also extended to the urban structure. In towns which are small, there are municipalities and municipal chairperson is the head. In towns which are bigger or called as the big cities, we have the municipal corporation headed by the mayor. Now, whatever we spoke was all good things about the local government, but the local government also faces certain difficulties. Like in these local government, elections to Gram Sabha are not held regularly, and the state government is not very keen and eager on transferring powers or resources to these local government. So until and unless the power or the resources are not transferred to the local government, it becomes very difficult for these local governments to function. Now, not only this, there are times when wherever the seats are reserved for women members, many times it has been observed that the female do not participate, rather a dummy is asked to contest the election, and the husband or the son takes over the entire power. So a female who is elected, you can see this into many movies, in the new movies which has come up, you can see that the Panch or the Sarpanch with a female might be the Sarpanch, but she's just a dummy character taken over by her husband or by the son. Now let's start the question answer for this lesson. This is the last bit of the entire session, which was divided into 3 parts: Federalism Part 1, 2, 3. Children, please do subscribe my channel, not for anything else, not for advertisement. Once you subscribe, as it is, the minute I put up a video, it would go to you immediately. So it would be easy for you to see. You don't have to check in from anywhere else, though the link would be shared on ClassUp. But still, if you subscribe, it would be much easier for you. Okay, so now let's do the question answers. Children, please remember, all these question answers must be written into your notebooks also. As it is, you are not coming to the school, so your notebooks are not corrected, and after 4 months when you are coming back, I don't want you to lose the habit of writing. So these question answers which I am sending it, because for this lesson I am not sending the PDF. So these question answers you must write into your notebooks. Okay, so let's begin with the first question for the last session. Explain 5 changes towards decentralization brought in the Constitution after the amendment made in 1992. So they are talking about the changes which were brought after the 1992 amendment. Let's see the changes which were brought. First, it was made constitutionally mandatory to hold regular elections. Second, seats were reserved for SC, STs and other backward communities. Women were given 1/3 representation. Election Commission, which was an independent institution, was created to conduct local body election, and state governments were required to share their power and revenue with local bodies. So the last one, which we said that the state governments were required to share their power and revenue, this also happens to be one of the difficulties. If you see, all these changes which we are talking about happens to be the difficulties also. The first one, we said that it is constitutionally mandatory to hold elections. We know that regular elections are not held, so that becomes a problem. Seats being reserved for SC, STs and OBCs. In the previous slide I said there has been disparity and dummy characters have been made or forced to contest the election, and the brain behind has been some other person. Women were given 1/3 representation. Again, here also it is a continuation of the second point, where seats are reserved but they do not, in the actual sense, does not happen. An independent institution for the State Election Commission, yes, this has been constituted, but the state governments are not ready to share the power, nor are they ready to share their revenue with the local bodies. Now, next question. What are the provisions given in the Indian Constitution which makes India a full-fledged federation? So let's see what are the provisions. First of all, let's understand the meaning of federation. A federation is a country in which the powers are divided between the union and its constituents. India is an example of holding together federation. Children, remember at the starting only we read two kinds of federation, coming together and holding together. So India is an holding together federation where the country decides to create constituent units, thereby dividing the powers and duties between the center and the state. Now, into a country like India, the powers have been very well defined between the center and the state. Decentralization of power has been there, and it was further increased by the amendment in 1992. Let's see what are the provisions given into the constitution. The first one, 2 or more levels of government. In India, we have 2 or more levels of government, that is the central government and the state government. Initially, it was 2 level of government, but now most of the states are having the 3rd level of government, that is the Panchayati Raj, which we have discussed earlier. Second point is that there are 3 lists, that is the union list, state list, concurrent list. Union list deals with the issues related to center, state list deals with issues related to states, and concurrent list deals with the matters of both the center and the state. For example, defense is a matter of the union list. Education can be a matter of the concurrent list. There are certain things like forest, education, these are the matters of both. Law and order, agriculture, this is the matter of the state list. So even the duties have been defined well. The powers, what are the powers which the state government will be taking, what are the powers which the union government will be taking, and what are the areas where both the center and the state would be working. Next is rigid constitution. That is, the government of India is governed by the constitution, and this constitution is considered supreme in the country. It is not that easy to make or changes in the constitution. Change in the constitution is called as amendment, and that is a procedure which has to be followed, which is a lengthy process which has to be followed, and many people have to be consulted. Therefore, changes cannot be made that easily until and unless we involve all the people from all the spheres, whether it is from the state or from the central. Next point is the bicameral legislature. This means that the parliament consists of 2 houses, Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha. One represents the country and the other represents the interest of the constituent states. That is, Lok Sabha is the is the body which is called as the lower house of the parliament, and Rajya Sabha is called as the upper house of the parliament. Directly elected representatives are sitting in the Lok Sabha. Therefore, Lok Sabha has more powers, which you have already done into your grade 9 when we were dealing with the money bill and the ordinary bill. Next point is the financial autonomy. The revenue sources of both the center and the states have been clearly defined, and this ensures financial autonomy to both the center and the state. So in the layman's language, the center and state have different source of income. That is why they are independent when it comes to revenue. Though the center provides a certain amount of money to the state, especially during the times of any kind of a disaster, and it provides extra amount of money when that disaster happens into that one particular state, but still the sources of incomes are different. Therefore, they are independent of each other in terms of revenue. Next point is independent judiciary. This is the very essence of federal government. Here courts have the power to interpret the constitution and the powers of the different levels of government. In India, the highest court is Supreme Court, and this acts as an umpire if a dispute arises between different levels of government in the exercise of their respective power. So if there is any differences between two or more states amongst themselves, or between a state and the central government, in that case Supreme Court's decision would be final, and in that case Supreme Court interferes and interprets the constitution. Thank you, students. So we end up this lesson. Kindly do write the question answers into your notebook, children, because you are not coming to school. We are not able to correct your notebooks. We are not able to take your notebooks. So kindly follow the instructions. Everything has been given. Since all the answers have been given in this, that's the reason why I am not sending a PDF for it. Okay. Thank you all. Stay safe. Stay happy.